Hi everyone, this is Iradian and here is the utility modulator tutorial for phase plant. So these three modulators are kind of weird. I don't use them very often. You probably won't either. It took me a while to understand what they did. Basically what I get from them is I would use them for very random long-term modulations, which would probably be more suited to sound design for ambient or drone type things. Some people just like to use them because Phaseplant can do crazy modulating things, and that's fine too. You can use them for whatever you want. As always, anything that can be modulated in Phaseplant, you can modulate using these three utilities. So they are max, min, and multiply, and we're going to go over what they do, starting with max. Now, max and min are pretty similar, but what max does is it requires two inputs. So what I've done in this patch is I've gotten two LFOs. They're at slightly different speeds, and I've routed one to input A, and I've routed the second one to input B. And what this does is max will take these two inputs, and the greater of the two it will use on the whatever parameters you've applied it to. So in this case, we're doing it on the drive to this phase distortion, and what you'll probably notice is that the modulation is kind of all over the place. It doesn't seem very structured or anything. So let's take a listen. Not really any distinctive pattern there, because the LFOs, or the two inputs, are going at different speeds, and it's using the greater of the two inputs, right? So when input B is greater, it'll use input B. When input A is greater, it'll use input A. That's basically how max works. The bigger of the two inputs it'll use. Now, min is similar, like I said, but it's like the opposite. It'll take the lesser of the two. So if input A is less, say input A is 1, and input B is 2, it'll use the input A, which is 1. I don't really need to play it. It'll sound pretty similar to what max did, but here's what min sounds like with the phase distortion drive. Pretty similar, except it's at lower values more often, because min, like I said, uses the lesser of the two values to determine how the modulation is going to go. Now, multiply is even weirder than max and min. What multiply does is, like max and min, it requires two values, but it multiplies them. So here we have our static multiplier. This is what it multiplies them by. Now, we have 0.001 or 1,000th, or we have 1,000. So what you're probably going to notice or find if you use this a few times is 1,000th and 1,000 are way too big or too small. Same with 100 or 100th. Usually what works best is 1/10 or 1, which are the two in the middle. I haven't really gotten much use out of the other ones, and the reason I think why I haven't is because either there's no movement, or the movement is so great that it's always at either extreme. So I can't really get much use out of 1,000 or 1,000th. And same with 100, like they're pretty extreme values. So we'll just listen to what it does at 1. In places it sounds like a normal sine-shaped LFO, but it's a little bit more random. So that's what multiply does. Like I said, anything that can be modulated in phase plant you can use to modulate. So basically anything, like I said. Phase plant is really good with modulating. You can multiply the max and the min by multiply. You can modulate the LFOs that you're modulating the utilities with. So if I modulate like the amount of the first input, I can get even more weirder results, and I could just modulate everything, Crazy stuff. Also kind of hard to control, so that's something to keep in mind as well.